I'm here with Jayson of Astralborne to talk about Across the Eons, out July 28th on Prosthetic Records. It's a pleasure to have you on the channel. First time that we get to sit down and chat, but not the first time that we've covered the band on A&P-Reacts. So thank you very much for taking the time to sit down with me. How's things going with you?
Very good. Thanks for having me, man. It's a pleasure to be here. Things are going great with the band. We're stoked. New album on the horizon in just a short amount of time. So we're on cloud nine right now. We can't wait.
So coming into this record, let me ask you this. When you guys sat down and it's time to start working on a new album, was there something that you guys wanted to cement as a continuation of the debut record? Or you look at an album as an individual record, not necessarily looking back or looking forward, just more concentrating on the present?
That's a great question. I would answer it like this. I would say the first record, Eternity's End, was very much a tribute in a lot of ways to our common influences. We're heavily inspired by melodic death metal, Gothenburg bands from Sweden, and everything from that era. So when we did Eternity's End, the band was a side project. It was kind of just meant to be something to do on the side for fun. We kind of looked through those influences, and the album was a homage in a lot of ways. We'd look at a riff and say, what would In Flames do here? Or what would Dark Tranquillity do on this drum part? When we started writing the follow-up Across the Aeons, we kind of started asking ourselves, what would Astralborne do here? We kind of found what we feel is unique in ourselves through that process. We took the building blocks from Eternity's End, and we feel like we built on that foundation and trying to find what makes us unique through that process. And I feel like we did a good job at that. I feel like the music is a lot more focused, a little bit more matured. So I couldn't be happier with the direction that the music has taken.
Was that challenging to change the chip there, going from one mindset that impacted one record to a completely different mindset that hopefully will impact the second record?
I don't think it was challenging. I think it was a natural progression. When the three of us formed the band, we told ourselves we're just doing it for fun. And, the moment it stops being fun, we would need to sit down and reevaluate why we're doing it. We're still having fun, happy to say. And I think that was just a natural progression of where the music went. That was the trajectory of, the evolution of the band. When album 2 came out or came to be, and we started working on that album, I feel like it was just the path that we were on as far as the sound and how it was going to evolve. And in the end, we don't really have a mission statement when we start to write music. We just kind of go where the music goes, and hope it goes somewhere good, and typically it does. So we're happy with it.
Is a sophomore record more impactful, or to a certain degree a little bit more defining as far as cementing what the DNA sound of the band will become as the band then looks forward into the future?
I think so. You've always heard the statement that you have forever in your career to write your first album, but you have a short amount of time to write the follow-up. There's a lot of pressure for the follow-up. I think it is important to really harness something good on that release. You don't want it to fall flat. So yeah, I think it's a lot more challenging just to outdo yourselves. Every band, whether you're fast, technical, doomy, whatever, you want to be more of that on the follow-up. You want to find a way to take the sound that you've laid down and amplify it. So it can be a challenge doing that. And I feel like we were up for that challenge. It's an exciting thing to do. And yeah, we're pretty pleased with the path that it took.
I'm going to mention some songs for you, and I want you to tell me what impact you see these songs having in the overall design of the record. Exordium, Promethean Fire, Cadence of Sorrow. These 3 tracks, how important were they for you guys in order for the overall album to feel more complete?
Great question, man. Well, Exordium, being the opening track, is an acoustic intro, kind of sets the precedent, sets the tone of the album. we always like an album opener. Sometimes, you know, bands will tack on like that little acoustic intro as part of the first track. Sometimes you want to skip over it. We like to have it as a standalone piece. And same with the outro. The outro kind of creates a feeling of closure with kind of almost the same feeling and ambience, but taken in another direction to kind of have the curtain close on the album, give it that final breath. So those two tracks kind of work as bookends for the intro and the outro of the record, and I feel like that helps really kind of complete the whole vision as far as, you know, from start to finish. Promethean Fire is kind of the intermission of the record. It's in the center. It's an instrumental track, heavy this time. We always have been fans of, you know, heavy instrumentals, and it kind of works as a little bit of a palate refresher in a way. You know, when side B starts, you have this fade in. It's almost like a new act with Promethean Fire and where that album goes. And as far as the theme goes, it's kind of, not that the album is a concept album of any kind, but if you were to look at it lyrically and where kind of the story goes, Promethean Fire kind of sets the stage for the second half of things, and I think the placement is perfect.
Yeah, I honestly felt like the album, due to its characteristics and sound, heaviness, experience, these three tracks are fundamental. If you don't have those three tracks on the album, it starts to feel like you're drowning into the record. So you honestly really need them in order for the listener to get the right ebbs and flows at the right time, so the record feels a little bit better together. And speaking of songs that add ebbs and flows, December Flower, whose idea was to do this track on the record?
Well, I would say collectively we all agreed to do it. Believe it or not, we tried a lot of different covers before we settled on December Flower. In Flames is a huge influence of ours. We kind of, when we released Eternity's End, we did a cover of the Judas Priest song Hell Patrol from Painkiller. That was kind of as a bonus at the end of the track, at the end of the track listing. And it was kind of just something fun on the side. December Flower, we feel like it kind of weaves into the ambience of the record. We felt like it was a good fit. But like I said, we tried some different bands. We put our hand in some different things. King Diamond, At the Gates, some Maiden.
Let me ask you this, King Diamond, what song?
Behind These Walls, Off the Eye. We didn't get as far as seeing how the vocals would work with that, but needless to say, it just didn't hit the mark. You know, it was just in the demo phases. Again, all influences of ours, especially Derek, huge influence from Andy LaRocque. So it would have been fitting, but does it fit with the whole soundscape? Probably not. In the end, In Flames, one of our biggest, you know, one of the forefathers of Gothenburg metal, we wouldn't be here without them. And on the other flip side of that, we heard a lot of reviews on Eternity's End comparing us to In Flames. So it was kind of like, if you can't beat them, join them. Like, let's do a cover and put our interpretation of their music on the record. So in the end, it was kind of a no-brainer.
I was a little bit divided because when I was listening to the record, I was like, first of all, I love the song. There's no question about how good the cover is. It's definitely one of my favorite tracks on the record. So that is out of the question. But I'm listening to the album and I'm like, you get December Flower, then you get this instrumental track right afterwards, right smack in the middle of a record. Nobody puts, or at least most people that I know, do not put an instrumental track and a cover smack in the middle of an album. Normally, the instrumental track comes 2/3 into the record, normally, specifically one like this. And if you look like at a record like Metallica, for example, with Orion, like the way it comes more towards the end of the album. Yep. And when you look at any band doing a cover these days, they throw it in as a bonus track right at the end. You guys completely broke the mold, throw this shit in the middle of the record. And I was like, I don't hate it. I don't like it, but I don't hate it. And honestly, I thought about this before I recorded my review. I couldn't think of a better place to put them. I'm really? Like, how can I hate these guys for doing something completely outside the box when I can't come up with a better idea? So if I can't come up with a better idea, this is going to be good.
Thank you, man. Well, Promethean Fire, I kind of mentioned why we feel that's in a good spot. As far as putting the cover song in the center, yes, it's not typical. But I mean, it's been done. I can go back to, Megadeth, So Far So Good So What. They have the Sex Pistols, right? Was it track 3? Van Halen, You Got Me, the Kings cover, that's like track 3.
Yeah, it's definitely early on in the album.
It's
The end of
early on. What's
the
the one
UK.
Hammerfall one they did on Legacy of Kings, the Pretty Maids cover? That's like in the middle. So it's been done. And a lot of the times those covers, well, I wouldn't say Megadeth necessarily in Van Halen, but like a lot of people didn't know that Hammerfall song was even a cover. So sometimes you sneak it in a way that new listeners, they don't even know. Not that you want to trick anybody, but I felt in the end, not to stick up for other bands and why they do what they do, we felt like it just fit where we put it in the center. And I'll tell you why more specifically. I'll have to tag team In Flames once again. If you look at the Horacle record, they have that Depeche Mode cover, but it's the second to last track, right? They didn't put it on as a bonus. They still had the outro of Horacle, which is a really cool acoustic song. And I think preserving those end caps was paramount in the feel of the story for it to go full circle. So, if Cadence of Sorrow had played at the end, this nice closure, and then a cover song happens, you kind of have that reset in your mind where like your palate's like, okay, now I got to readjust, where you went on this nice journey and then you had a kind of like, there's a disconnect. So in the center, I feel like, it's just a good spot for it. And it lets us complete the track listing in a way that kind of allows it to come circular. And
it almost work as another interlude, because when you think at the soundscape of the record, how condensed it is, how heavy it is, and if you look at the album as having a first half and second half, that December Flower and that Promethean Fire back to back, they kind of work really well together in order to break away from the experience of before and kind of get you ready for the experience that's going to follow.
Thank you for saying that. I feel like when you listen to it on vinyl, you definitely take away that feeling, because side A ends with the cover song, and then you got to flip the record. Promethean Fire starts with that nice fade, and it does feel like a nice, like a new chapter has started. So placement wise, I'm happy with it. It mightn't be unconventional, but it is what it is.
So what was your game plan drum-wise coming into this album? Did you want to try some new things? Did you want to just cement what you had done before?
We try to be a little more rhythmic on this one. Songs like Gemini, trying some new patterns and things that are a little more pummeling, a little more syncopated. I come from a thrash background, so a lot of my drumming is very speed-oriented, not necessarily technique or groove. But when we look at songs like Gemini, there's some groove in that song, and it was a little outside of our comfort zone. So trying new things was definitely something we wanted to do. But we've always kind of embraced speed metal and thrash metal. So thrash beats and blasts and double bass has kind of always been the mission statement. Full workout all the time. So did I try new things? Not really. I wasn't really reinventing the wheel, but we like our brand of aggressive and fast melodeath. So sticking with that formula and that recipe, it was kind of a no-brainer from the start to continue in that fashion. And it complements the riffs. When Derek and I work on music, he's sending me riffs. I've sent him back drum ideas, and it just naturally goes in that direction, because we're just the sum of our parts and some of our influences, and fast drums just make sense for our style, I think.
When it comes to the sound of the band, where do you feel your drums have to be within the mix and even the production behind them in order for the band to be true to their original DNA?
That's a good question. I don't know if it needs to go any one particular direction. We're a very guitar-oriented band. It's very guitar attack. So I feel like, I hate to admit it, but the drums are probably the most expendable, in terms of a mix. But fortunately, I feel like we got a pretty good drum sound on this new record. It's very in your face, fat drums. We had some really good team of engineers and handling the mixing and mastering. So we got a good sound. But going into it, it's not necessarily a goal of mine to say, let's walk away with the fattest fucking drum sound we can get, because I know What's going to complement the music in the end is the guitars, the solos, the licks. We want those to be as upfront as we can. You know, we're a do-it-yourself band, so the final product isn't always 100% what we're trying to do. We do the best we can with what we got. And yeah, if drums take a back seat, that's fine. If they come up a little more in the final result, that's fine too. Obviously, I'm not going to complain as a drummer. But I think it to me it can go either direction. It's kind of what it is what it is, where it ends up and how it sounds. So in the end, you know, the record, I think we captured a good enough drum sound for everything else to be complimented.
So let me ask you this: Have you been able to take a look at this album with an analytical eye and look at the melodic side of the record? Because I felt at times the melodic side of the record felt a little bit hidden by the overall heaviness of the album, not just by the drums, but even by the guitars themselves. When the guitars are heavy, the guitars are heavy. But the melodic side, at times, it almost feels just more as a layer and not having necessarily as much of a podium to showcase itself. Do you agree with that to a certain extent on this album?
I think I do. I know that we have a tendency to write busy music. You know, we layer it on pretty thick. And then when it comes down to being in the studio and we're on the chopping block, we have to take away things. Sometimes we just don't want to because, you know, we're used to hearing them a certain way. So in a way, it's our fault that it's structured that way. You know, we kind of approach vocals and things last, and then trying to find a way to put them in the music is often challenging because, you know, Derek is a very noodly player. We have a lot of riffs and things, but we like to layer. So, you know, cool rhythm parts sometimes get buried. And that's just obviously a challenge with how it is sonically. Again, what we have to work with. It's not as slick as bands on giant labels like Century Media, but I feel like the overall essence is there. You know, it might take a few listens to really get the full picture, but I think an album is better for that because of that. You know, sometimes when you listen to a record a few times, you take away some new things, some new elements. Oh, I never noticed that part before. That's pretty cool what they're doing there. I appreciate that. But in the end, you know, it's something we're cognizant about. And, you know, going into album 3, it's obviously something we're going to continue to try to develop as we go.
Do you have a track that stands out to you on this record as being, and I'm talking from a drums point of view, as being a little bit more challenging, that created a little bit more work for you to get it to what you wanted it to be?
Definitely the track Gemini. It's a slower song from the rest of the songs. It's more mid-pace, but again, it's very rhythmic, and it's just not what I'm used to playing. You really never get a break. There's a lot of intricacy that, you know, we were trying to tap into some Richard Christie and some Gene Hogan and some Death influence and things like that. So I would say that song was primarily the biggest challenge. You can hear it in the track that it's doing something different. It's not as, you know, you can't really draw a straight line through it as much as the other songs with, you know, simple beats or blasts and things like that are kind of more linear. I feel like that song structurally is a lot more focused and developed compared to the other songs.
I'm surprised you didn't say Across the Eons, because
Well,
what I want to say next is not a diss. What I want to say next is a compliment hidden as a diss. Across the Eons is like it's like when you want winter sun, but you get winter sun on Wish. But I don't mean that in a negative way, I promise.
no,
I thought was one of the most epic tracks. It's the most epic track, not one of the most. It's the most epic track on the record. 9+ minutes of pure epicness. It did have a winter sun feel to it, at least to me.
that's okay.
But I was floored that you guys included a song like that. So many layers, so textured, so dynamic. Acoustic guitars in it. Not that you guys didn't had used acoustic guitars before, because you used it as the bookends of the record, but still, you found a way of including them into this track. just an outstanding epic track. I'm surprised you didn't say that this was the most challenging, because to me, this song looks like it took a lot of effort and a lot of work.
You're right. I mean, it was definitely our most ambitious track on the album. I think from the drum perspective, where the drums do happen, I don't think they're really reinventing the wheel. But the song itself, absolutely, it was absolutely an undertaking. You mentioned Winter Sun, definitely a huge influence. Thank you for mentioning that. We weren't trying to do Winter Sun necessarily, but Winter Sun does
Winter
have
Sun
a
is not even trying to do Winter Sun these days, so
we won't get into that, man. We've covered that base. But Winter Sun can write chapters and theme, and in peaks and valleys, and that's a huge influence to us. We recognize it. So yeah, it's definitely an influence for what this song became. We looked at a lot of songs, honestly. We're always fans of really big epic tracks that close out a record. You look at Rhyme of the Ancient Mariner, or there's big songs in general, Dante's Inferno, where there's movements. When we did Eternity's End, the title track kind of does the same thing. It's 12 minutes plus. We wanted to do something similar. We wanted to have parallels with that first record. We wanted to have the title track be the most grandiose and put it at the end, the same way we did the first record. So we did that, and the song is a fucking journey, man. I won't lie. It takes you through different feelings and places. And when we wrote it, it was kind of like, let's say we're at the 4-minute mark. Like, what do we do now? Like, let's just keep adding to it. Let's just keep adding to it. Put some acoustics here. And the song naturally just has this ebb and flow that finally we said, we got to fucking end it. So we did a nice little fade out at the end. But honestly, we could have had that song go on for 20 plus if we really wanted to, because that's so much fun to make a record, or to make a track like that on a record that's so ambitious and grandiose. That's great. You look at songs like what was the one, Insomnium, off of Heart Like a Grave, Pale Morning Star, definitely a big influence on this one. We looked at Bellacore, bands like that do a lot of songs within songs. You know what I mean? Like verse, chorus, forget it. Throw that out the fucking window. It's reinvent the song structure as you go. And that was the whole, what was fun about that song. But it was absolutely challenging. You're right. But very rewarding as well.
One last question for you. You said it earlier, you guys are a do-it-yourself band. As a do-it-yourself band, not how you set, but what do you set as the goals for a successful album to be?
Honestly, I feel like it's just being true to ourselves. Success is in the eye of the beholder, or the ear of the beholder, I guess. We do this for us. And again, we're having fun with it. So, we got picked up by Prosthetic Records a few years back. When the three of us were sitting there on signing that dotted line, we said, let's keep this fun. We didn't want it to be toxic. We didn't want egos to rise, and we didn't want limelight to fucking ruin what we set out to do. We're drinking beer, we're playing riffs, we're telling fart jokes, and we're having fun. Let's not water that down. Let's not fly too close to the sun, Icarus. You know what I mean? So success is a byproduct. If you're being true to yourself, you're having fun. If there's a platform for your music, and absolutely there is in this day and age, we're in the digital age, there's a platform for everybody's music. If we're fortunate enough for people to listen to it, that's amazing. And we thank you. Thank you. Please listen to it. We couldn't be happier that you do. But at the end, we write music for ourselves. So we measure it in terms of, are we having fun? Can we listen to the record and be happy about it? If the answer is yes, then we're doing something right.
Perfect. I couldn't have hoped for a better way to end our conversation than that. Jayson, thank you very much for your time. It's always a pleasure to talk to you. Let's make this a little bit more frequent.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? I honestly really enjoyed our conversation. We've been in touch with each other for a very long time, since the debut album. So let's keep staying in touch. And every time you guys are cooking up something, if you guys are having some shows and you want us to like publicize it, whatever it is, just hit me up. Let me know what we can help you guys with. And once again, thank you for your time today.
Thank you, man. Appreciate you.
Take care, man.
Cheers.